Hello, everyone. Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Wednesday, November the 26th, 12:30 Rio de Janeiro time. We are starting one more live stream. And as usual, if you are here live with us, you have a priority to request topics of your interest to be discussed live. We're going to discuss those topics like in general lines. If it is like a public subject, then yes, we can get into more details. For instance, if we're talking about immigration, I can address public laws or regulations. If it is a specific case with specific facts, I may not be able to discuss those in details because we are precluded by the Brazilian Bar Association to provide a consultation for free, right? So if you want to have things discussed in general, you are welcome to enter into the chat window here, and we're gonna be discussing as we go. And let's take a look at our chat. It looks like we don't have any participation so far, so maybe we're gonna start by taking a look at Brazilian news. Let's take a look at this newspaper. Hold on a second. I'm not sure if it is working as it should. All right. Can you guys see my screen? I'm trying to present a page of Estadão. Estadão is a major Brazilian newspaper, and what I see here on my YouTube studio is not like the page, but the page is on the monitor where I typically use. So let me know if it is working or not. But anyhow, maybe I can just read the news and tell you what's going on. So the main headline for Estadão reads like this: Moraes quer matar Bolsonaro e forçar presidenciável sem nome da família in 2026, says Eduardo. Right. So this is one of the Congressman Eduardo Bolsonaro, who is the son of former president Jair Bolsonaro, and he's basically accusing, the star justice of Brazil, Alexandre de Moraes, of trying to kill Bolsonaro and also prohibit any family member with a Bolsonaro, last name to participate in the elections, right? The big news here, which is not saying in this main headline, is that President Bolsonaro was actually taken into custody this current week. President Bolsonaro was taken into custody. I don't recall if it was on Sunday. Maybe it was on Sunday. I don't recall when was that, okay? But he was taken into custody, and, the explanation by the Brazilian Supreme Court was that he was tampering with his ankle collar, if you will. It's like an electronic device, just like it is used in the United States. So he was tweaking with the device, and there was also a presence of, like a pacific demonstration around the president's residence. So they said, well, he may be trying to flee. He may be trying to go to the U.S. embassy, right? To escape a prison time, and then they decided to take him into custody. It looks like right now he's in the Brazilian Federal Police, in a specific building from the Brazilian Federal Police, and there is this whole discussion, right? And this is, what draws a lot of attention is the fact that is a single, justice who's always, pulling the strings. Fair to say that the remainder of the court, most of the Supreme Court justices, they are aligned with the main justice like behind this whole process against former President Bolsonaro, right? And yes, I mean, I guess this is the same like anywhere nowadays. A lot of polarization, right? Like a lot of people, really, in one side of the aisle. Okay, like I mean, that's in my opinion, like it would be so good, like if we could come, closer, right, and try to work to make our countries better. But it looks like, this polarization and disputes over politics is kind of the same, no matter where you are. All right. Matt Gaines. Boa tarde, Dr. Oliveira. Boa tarde, Matt. Boa tarde, Matt. Boa tarde, Adrian. I hope you guys are doing well. And just getting started, let me know if you guys have a topic of your interest so we can, again, discuss here live. And just taking a subject out of our backlog, transportation or, moving to Brazil, okay? And moving to Brazil, it's typically, full of red tape. Like, I mean, there are many bureaucratic procedures, and I'm not talking about the immigration side. I'm talking about actually sending your stuff to Brazil. And, the first question I recommend our clients to ask themselves is whether, they really want to take all their belongings to Brazil, or maybe, just take something or those things that are more personal. Okay. Typically, when you ship a container to Brazil, there is a substantial price tag. And, unfortunately, when you get in touch with the transportation companies, they never talk about the exceptions. And in our experience, the exceptions, they are actually often, right? Like, I'm not sure if they're even exceptions, right? Maybe the exception is going to be the perfect moving, okay? So maybe the standard is more like, some level of exceptions, typically increasing substantially the initial estimate provided by the freight forwarder, okay? Some of the exceptions we see very often is going to be like delays in terms of releasing the container. Like once the ship arrives at the port, the container is going to be sent to a certain area, to wait for an inspection by the Brazilian Federal Police. And it's very common for this to take substantially longer than expected. And then you're going to face costs for the rental of the container. There is the so-called demurrage. Demurrage, I think it's a French term, which is like, the penalties that you're going to pay, not just for the rental of the container, but also the overstay at the port, right? So you start to be hit, by multiple additional costs and fees, right? And they can add up, quite fast. And so, like this question, if you're going to ask, listen, do I need to take those things to Brazil? And the cases that I see that are going to still be good for you to bring your things to Brazil is like if you have a really high-end furniture, right? Like let's say you have a high-end furniture that you've been collecting throughout your adult life, and they are irreplaceable, right? So in this case, if you're gonna pay $20,000, right, like to have your container delivered in Brazil, if you're gonna pay $30,000, right, maybe that's not that meaningful, right? You say, listen, I'm gonna pay $30,000, but I'm gonna receive something that's important to me on a personal level. Okay, now if you don't have such type of furniture, sometimes, or for many people, it would be preferred to basically just bring, let's say, if you're going back to the U.S. and coming to Brazil, you could have your your more personal belongings in a storage, and then you would bring like those smaller items, collectibles, family photos, personal documents, like I don't know, like stuff that you saved from your high school, from your college, from your elementary school. Those things could be brought to Brazil in a paced manner, right? Like as long as you have a small storage, you don't need to bring all of those things at once. So you could basically bring those things once you travel from the United States to Brazil. There is a quota. Nowadays, the quota is $1,000, but typically the Brazilian Federal Police is going to enforce the quota against things like electronics or things with value. It could be like liquor or, like cigarettes, right? Like if you're bringing clothes, particularly if they are used, or if you're bringing like personal documents, naturally, they are not going to consider those things for the quota. All right, but I wanted to share that. That's a recurring topic in our consultations. We have James. Good day. Thank you for doing this. You're welcome, James. Thank you for showing up. James is asking, can I start the process of the digital nomad visa with you guys, then leave the country before my 90-day tourist visa is over for a few months, and then come back to Brazil to finish the process? Yes, James, that's something that you can do whenever we are filing for a residency, right? Like the digital nomad, and just a minor nuance here. Like when you apply for the digital nomad abroad, meaning that you're applying, for instance, in the United States, right? So let's say if you are from the U.S., if you're applying in the U.S. through a Brazilian consulate, yes, we're going to call this as a digital nomad visa. But if you are applying while physically in Brazil, then we call it a residency. And the importance of this distinction is that, when you apply for the visa and when you apply for the residency, there are slightly different requirements, right? So that's why I'm sharing about this distinction. It's not because I'm being picky. I don't want to, bring technical terminology to you guys. It's just to make this distinction clear. So if you are applying in Brazil, it's going to be the digital nomad residency. And yes, when we apply in Brazil on your behalf, you got to be physically in the country. And as soon as we file the application, then you are free to travel back to your country of origin or travel elsewhere. And then next time we're going to need you in the country is going to be when you need to attend the appointment at the Brazilian Federal Police. Okay, and I'm going to mention different types of visa or residencies. They are going to have different requirements in terms of steps. Is not the same framework for everything, right? For instance, if you're applying for residency through marriage, a completely different process. It doesn't work like the digital nomad. But for the digital nomad, it does work really well. You could be in the country. We file the application. About 45 days down the line, the Brazilian immigration is going to review your application. They could either ask for additional evidence or they could approve right from the bat. Once this is approved, then we typically wait for the approval to be published in the Brazilian Official Gazette, which in Portuguese is the Diário Oficial da União. Once it is published, that's when we can go into the Brazilian Federal Police system and schedule an appointment for you to attend. And then naturally, you need to come back to attend the appointment. At the appointment, if you are in Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo or Brasilia, we typically go with you to the appointment. And at the appointment, if everything goes well, you receive the provisory residency paperwork, which is called the protocolo, and it's like a single sheet of paper with your resident number on it, your picture, other information. And then a couple of months down the line, you would receive the card. So that's actually something kind of common here, James, right? Like, particularly if you are a digital nomad, right? Like, I mean, many people are traveling remote, but sometimes they need to go back, to the United States, to the United Kingdom, or other countries for in-person meetings, and then they're going to come back to Brazil, and they're going to be actually traveling back and forth, and that's pretty natural for the digital nomad. Right now, again, just like I said, it doesn't apply to every single type of visa or residency. The marriage-based, for instance, we typically recommend that, like once you are starting the process, that you don't leave the country for at least 4 or 5 months. But again, different things with different requirements, if you will. All right, let's share about our partner, Remax. Remax, again, real estate agency based in Rio de Janeiro. Even though they are based in Rio de Janeiro, they actually help with buyers throughout the country. Okay, so even if you're targeting Florianópolis, if you're targeting Fortaleza, São Paulo, you can get in touch with Remax Nomad States. We have a partnership with them in which the idea is that they are going to try to follow our typical procedures in terms of assessing which properties are suitable, for foreign buyers, and also try to keep like some standards that are going to be higher than the average in Brazil in terms of safety for the transaction, right? Like in Brazil, there is no escrow account. I mean, there is a pilot, in a bank, and also in some registries, they're starting to try to offer an escrow. However, it's not typical of the Brazilian market. So sellers are going to typically not accept to work with such escrows, right? So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is the lack of title insurance. So in the United States, typically when you buy a property, risk is minimal, right? Like in Brazil is actually the opposite, right? Like risk is substantial, and not surprisingly, like a percentage of buyers are going to end up losing their shirts, right? So very important to have a trustworthy partner, and we do recommend Remax Nomad States. Okay, so here it is. Let's take a look. We have a Hermon. Good day, my friend, and chat room people. Welcome, Hermon. Good to see you. Are places like Florianópolis, Blumenau, Belém still good places to buy land or a home? Hermon, so Florianópolis and Blumenau, as you probably know, they are both in Santa Catarina. Now, Belém is actually in Pará, which is like, almost like, on the other extreme of the country, right? So Florianópolis, Blumenau, like south of the country, typical south. And Pará is like north of Brazil, right? Like, so the extreme opposite, and very different scenarios. For investment, Florianópolis and Blumenau are better choices, in my opinion. Belém is not such a popular market with foreign citizens. So it also depends on your target amount, right? Like if you're buying something that is easily accessible to Brazilians, then maybe you're just fine. But if you're buying a higher end properties, you would rather buy in a market in which there are other foreign citizens active in the market, because then you have prospective buyers with a higher purchase power. Okay, so very different profiles. Now, the upside of Belém naturally is going to be, price-wise, they are going to be like a fraction of what you would pay in Blumenau, in Florianópolis, right? Like there is Camboriú. Camboriú is in the pot as well, right? Like so, Camboriú is like the main beach area in Santa Catarina, and prices over there, they're just like getting, ridiculous, right? Like, I mean, there is a new development over there, and they're selling, like huge apartments, like with all types of luxury features you can potentially imagine, like, those type of things that, you see like in New York City or Dubai, for instance. People would have, access by car to their floor, right? So you're going to drive your car into the garage, you're going to enter with your car into an elevator, and this elevator is going to take your car, to a private parking area on your floor. Naturally, single, one apartment per floor. And last time I read something about this development, I'm talking about a particular one. Of course, it's not the rule, right? But this one, I think it was something like 30 million reais per apartment, right? Like something around $6 million per apartment, right? So that's Camboriú, that's Santa Catarina, right? Now, if you go to Belém, you would never imagine something like that available in Belém, right? Like Belém is going to be a state in which typically, properties are going to be, low price when you compare to anything, like in the south of Brazil, if you will. But that's a food for thought. And Hermon, there is nothing wrong with picking one or the other. It just means that you're going to find what works best, given your criteria. Andrea Logan, oi, tô aqui no Rio agora. All right, Andrea, how are you enjoying Rio de Janeiro? Is it good? How can I start the process of getting my digital nomad residency visa with you all? I am in your emails now, Andrea. So, to start the process, you basically you're going to send an email. I'm going to write over here, all right? You're going to send an email to info@oliveiralawyers.com. And then Justin, she's the one, right? And it's a she, it's not a he, even though her name is Justin, who will help you with the onboard. She would send you an outline of the services, the fees. Once you say yes, she's going to send you a service agreement. We get the service agreement signed. She sends you an invoice. You take care of the invoice, and the work is started. Okay, most of our immigration team is actually based in Rio de Janeiro, right? But we typically do not provide advisory on the spot, right? Like when you visit our Rio de Janeiro office, you're going to see that everybody is busy working on their cases. When we have a visit from either a client or a prospect, we are happy to prepare cafezinho brasileiro, right? A Brazilian coffee for you to enjoy. And if you say, well, I want to hire services, they're going to say, all right, now you're going to get in touch with Justin, and here is her card, right? And then they're going to give you the card, and then you're going to need to work things out with Justin. Justin works on the onboarding, and then she's going to assign a team member to your case, all right? But you are more than welcome to drop by for cafezinho brasileiro, for a Brazilian coffee. No need to give us a heads up, being a regular work day, meaning not a holiday in Brazil. Our team is going to be working diligently on other cases, but they would be happy, to prepare a Brazilian coffee for you to enjoy, if that makes sense, Andrea. Hermon, thank you, my friend, for the information. Still doing my homework before I starting visiting your beautiful country. Thank you for sharing, Hermon. Yes, Hermon, visiting is like a very important, piece of your journey towards buying property in Brazil. Brazil is, like everybody knows, it has like continental dimensions. Sometimes, people don't actually recognize how big Brazil is. And Brazil is actually bigger than the United States if you don't account for Hawaii and Alaska, right? So the continental United States, which is huge, is actually smaller than Brazil. Can you believe it? So I'm saying that to convey the idea that it is almost like we're talking about many countries in a country, okay? So if we're talking about the North and the South, completely different, like culture, types of properties, customs, and, weather, and experience in general. So before you decide to settle, it's a very good idea to test the waters, if you will. Now, another thing or a different perspective on that, if someone is pursuing the retirement or the investor visa, sometimes, the location in which you're going to buy the property is not going to be that meaningful because you don't need to actually live in the property. So we have many clients who are going to buy a property for the purpose of the investor visa. They are going to do like short-term rentals with this property, and they are going to be traveling all over the place and eventually settling in a place that's not the same place in which they bought the property. Okay, so if the purpose is for for the investor visa / residency, I don't think you need to be that crazy about where you're going to buy. If it is like for the sake of investment, or if you want to live in the property, then it may make more sense for you to be pickier. All right, Marisa Navas, boa tarde, Dr. Luciano. Estamos juntos nas suas lives. Thank you, Marisa. So good to have you over here. Send my regards to Ricardo. Thank you for your support in Portugal. All right, James, can the FBI background check that is apostilled be official email version that they send and then sent off to FBI office in DC for it to be apostilled? All right, so I think James' question over here is whether you can basically send the PDF that you get from FBI to Washington, D.C. To be apostilled. And this is like public information, so I'm not really providing a specific advisor over here. And yes, James, like typically you can use the PDF that you get from the FBI to get an apostilled version from the Department of State in Washington, D.C., right? Like an FBI background check naturally is a federal government, and therefore, the correct way of getting an apostille is for you to use the Department of State, which happens to be in Washington, D.C. Now, a nuance, James, right? I'm not sure if I think you said something, yes. So James was talking about digital nomad. And James, if you are applying with us in Brazil, typically we're not going to require an FBI background check with an apostille, right? Whenever you apply with us, one of the components is going to be like a cover letter stating our representation of your case as a law firm. And typically when you apply with us, they are not going to ask you for the digital nomad. Again, like different visas and residencies, different requirements. But for the digital nomad, typically when you apply with us, you're not going to need an FBI level background check, and you're not going to need an apostille for the FBI background check as well, right? So just an example, we have many clients from New York. In New York, you can get a good background check from the New York court system. I think it costs $96, if I'm not mistaken, and it's issued typically in a day or two, and we would use that document as is for your application. All right, so just giving you the heads up, you don't need to go through all this trouble of getting an apostilled FBI background check if you're going to work with us on the Brazil Digital Nomad Residency. Matt Gaines, Matt sent me like $10. Matt is buying me lunch today. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you, Adrian. Very generous. Always good to have you guys here with us. Thank you for your generosity. All right. Andrea, it is good here in Rio, but it's just very, very windy right now. Will I be able to just stay the entire time without overstaying while the visa is being processed? Andrea, so, just like a distinction I was explaining at the beginning of the live, I'm going to repeat it real quick. When you apply abroad, meaning through a Brazilian consulate, this is going to be a visa, meaning the digital nomad visa. When you apply while you're physically in Brazil, which is your case, it's not going to be a visa. We're going to call it a residency, right? So it's going to be the Brazil digital nomad residency. And this distinction is going to be important in our communication because the visa and the residency, they have different requirements. I can, share one just to illustrate what I'm saying. If you're applying in the United States for the Brazil Digital Nomad Visa, guess what? You must have health insurance, not travel insurance. You must have health insurance with coverage in Brazil. However, if you are applying for the Brazil Digital Nomad Residency while physically in Brazil, guess what? There is no such requirement for health insurance or even travel insurance for that matter, right? Now, going back to your question, and it goes like this. Once we file the application, once this application is within the Brazilian immigration, we like to say that, this is going to stop the clock, meaning that is the time that you're going to wait for the either approval or denial of your application. This time should not be counted against your quota of allowed stay in Brazil, right? So this is naturally a point of concern to many of our clients because they say, well, if this thing is going to take like 3 months, guess what? I'm going to be out of status. I don't want to be legally in Brazil. There's going to be fine. Maybe they're going to be picky with me next time I try to come. I get it. And the answer is like from a legal perspective, you are allowed to stay in Brazil for as long as it takes for the Brazilian immigration to review and process your application. All right, Andrea. So yes, very good strategy. Many people, get the digital nomad residency is specifically because of that. First thing, it gets you time. If you are short in time, it's going to get you more time in Brazil, and it's also easier, to meet the requirements than it is for longer term stays, right? The digital nomad is typically for a year. You can renew it, and it is a way, for Brazil to allow qualified applicants to stay for longer periods of time in Brazil. So typically, a good choice of first residency in Brazil, Andrea. All right. Brazilian Digital Nomad Residency. Thank you for taking notes, Andrea. I see you taking notes. Thank you for, following. Thank you for following along. Andrea, do not need the apostille, FBI background check, health insurance, or travel insurance while you're in Brazil. Exactly. Now, I like to make this distinction because, again, the Brazilian immigration, they have a discretion on how to process an application or how to review the requirements or to ask for additional documents. And this is a question, I typically have all right, so are you guaranteeing I'm not going to need the, apostille, the FBI background check, right? And two parts to this answer. The first one, we can never guarantee if they find something funky or, if for some reason they change their criteria in the middle of the process, yes, you could need it. And the second part of the answer is that this is our experience when representing clients, right? Like when we represent a client in our letter of representation, we also needed to kind of say that we reviewed the client's situation and documents, and we are kind of, supporting or, making a good faith application, right? And that could have, some weight when the Brazilian immigration is reviewing the application, right? So if you apply, let's say, if you're a self-applicant, right, potentially they could have a different criteria for the background check. All right, Andrea, just to make sure that this is clear. But thank you for kind of highlighting here the things that we discussed so far. I also want to, say thank you for your presence here at the live stream and invite you to like our live stream. And you like our live stream, you help our business, and you also help other people just like you find this content, because naturally, the higher the number of likes, the higher is going to be YouTube's trust on the content to share with other people. So really important. We have about 20 viewers as we speak, and only 5 likes. So if you would be kind enough, to give us a like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, consider doing so, and that would be appreciated. All right, let's see what else we have. Okay, so I'm going to address something here from our backlog. All right, in terms of currency exchange, do you have any ideas of whether, the U.S. dollar is going to increase in power when compared to the Brazilian currency or not? Right, yeah, that's a difficult question for us to answer. And I guess, nobody really could answer this question, right? The financial markets, they are interconnected, and typically, major events, they are going to impact on how the currencies are going to behave. Sometimes I find it interesting, right? Like in the United States, there is always like this kind of doomsday expectation, right? Like many people contact us for immigration into Brazil or Portugal, and they are basically saying, well, the United States is coming to an end, right? I don't share of the opinion, right? I think, the United States just, like in many other countries, they do face challenges, some serious challenges, if you will. But I don't believe in a doomsday, right? If you don't trust the U.S. dollar, what are you going to trust? Are you going to trust, China's currency? Are you going to trust like euro? Or are you going to trust Brazilian reais? I don't know. In my opinion, the U.S. dollar and the United States, they remain as the most solid country out there when it comes from, financial power, technology leadership, and so on, right? So no doomsday beliefs from my side. So therefore, even though I don't have, unfortunately, like an opinion on whether the U.S. dollar is going to increase or decrease in purchase power when compared to the Brazilian currency, I just don't think, those exaggerated perspectives on the, I don't know, failure of United States are going to materialize, right? That reminds me of Warren Buffett. He has a very famous saying, you probably know, don't bet against the United States, all right? That's Warren Buffett's, famous saying, like whenever people are saying, well, now things are going to go really bad, and he comes back and say, well, I don't typically think you should be betting against the United States, all right? But that's a personal opinion, right? And I do respect other opinions, right? Particularly from those who are living in the United States, are, disappointed at public policies, the politics. I get it, and I do respect your opinion for sure. Okay. All right, Andrea, question. Let's say you run your own online business. Is that difficult for your clients get their visa residency because of the documents not being from a company that is not their own? Andrea, we do have strategies for business owners. We do have a strategy for people working on online activities, right? So my recommendation because this would be more like a specific matter that would trigger like a need for a consultation, is that you consider scheduling a consultation with our firm. Like when you schedule a consultation and you pay for this consultation, the fee that you pay is actually credited once you hire our services, right? So in theory, you will get this consultation for free, and then you can have like proper specific feedback to your specifics and help you in the decision process of whether to proceed with the Brazil Digital Nomad Residency. All right, Andrea, I hope that makes sense. All right, I see that now we have 13 likes. I appreciate you guys taking the time, and very appreciative of your likes. And all right, let's take another topic of our backlog. Okay. All right, whether you would, if you were like a U.S. citizen, would you pick Portugal or Brazil as your destination, right? Like, I mean, I'm just talking about these two countries because I know these are the countries you specialize in, right? Okay, so listen, Portugal and Brazil, they couldn't be more different as a destination. Even though there are many similarities, right? Like, I mean, the language, Portuguese, is the same, right? Like, I mean, even though there are, different words, even though there is a very different accent, even though there is a different way of, saying things, there is typically no difficulties for like a Brazilian to communicate in Portugal and vice versa. Okay, there is also like a common cultural element because Brazil was colonized by Portugal in the past, so just natural that many of the ways of doing things in Brazil, they're going to be similar to what you see in Portugal. But aside of that, I think they couldn't be more different, right? Because Portugal is a very small country. Okay, it would be probably, I don't know, like, I mean, it would be the equivalent of the city of São Paulo in terms of population, and for sure not even as big as the state of São Paulo, right? So it's a much better controlled territory from a management perspective, right? So much easier for Portugal to do a good job in terms of managing things. And as a result, and not like trying to say, Portugal is not doing a good job, but things in Portugal, they actually run really, really well, right? Like, I mean, if you look at health services, if you look at, like roads, if you look at infrastructure, if you look at so many different things, like Portugal is going to shine, and Portugal is going to be way ahead of Brazil. Okay. Now, Brazil on the other side, like, is a huge country, so it's more like a collection of different countries, if you will, and there are serious challenges when it comes like to public services. Okay, maybe because even though Brazil is one of the 10 or 11, sometimes 12 largest economies in the globe, right, we still have challenges in some areas. Security in general is something that could be substantially improved. Health services as well, right? So very different choices, and the different profiles I see, when people go to Portugal, they're typically fine with like a more calmer, like, a lifestyle, if you will. Sometimes even could get like to boredom, right? Like, I mean, in Portugal, like people, typically follow a routine, and you have like an older population, and like, so if you're looking for safety, the best health services you could probably get. If you're looking for those things, maybe access to other countries of the European Union, naturally Portugal is going to be the choice. Now, for those of you choosing Brazil, typically it's going to be because of a more upbeat culture, right? Like Brazilians are super, like upbeat, like they, look forward to enjoying time together with friends, like we have many celebrations. It's almost like life in Brazil is like an eternal, a forever celebration, right? Like from waking up in the morning to going to bed in the evening, like it's just like a series of happy events, if you will, even when people face difficult situations, right? Like in Brazil, you have a good share of the population without access to reasonable financials, right? Like in other words, like they don't make money enough to take care of their necessities. And believe it or not, like, these people are typically happy, right? Maybe happier than many rich people in other countries would be. So it's so interesting, right? Like when you are interacting with people in Brazil, you are going to get a glimpse of that perspective on life, right? And please feel free to share if you have a different experience, like in Brazil. If you notice something different, let us know. This is an open forum, okay? Don't let me just talk in here by myself. All right, and I see you guys took the chance to, participate, and now I see we have many entries here in our chat window. We have Rashama. Good morning, Rashama. When I get my residency in Brazil, will it be possible to buy lands to build houses? Rashama, so unfortunately, land, right, like rural land, is not completely accessible to foreign citizens, right? So even if you have a permanent residency, you're still going to face restrictions on buying rural land. Now, there is some level of access to rural land, meaning you can buy like smaller tracts. It's just that you cannot buy large areas. And depending on where you're buying, if there are too many foreign citizens buying in that area, there may be a cap that would preclude you from buying even smaller properties. Very rare to happen, okay? That's not typical. Typically, it does not matter where you're trying to buy land. You would be able to buy the smaller lands. There are some additional restrictions, like if it is close to a Brazilian military base, or if it is like a beachfront property or a body of water front property, you may need additional licenses from the Brazilian government. But unfortunately, those restrictions, they are going to go away only after you acquire Brazilian citizenship, if you will. Interesting question, Rashama. Mo da Fala. Hello, Mr. Oliveira. Hello, Mo. I gladly got the digital nomad visa and will be traveling to Brazil soon. Based on your experience, is it easy to get an early Brazilian Federal Police appointment slot, or there will be a long waiting time? So, Mo, this is going to depend on where you're going to apply. Okay, so Rio de Janeiro, they are typically faster with appointments. The São Paulo Brazilian Federal Police is typically the opposite. They take a long time to give you a spot. They typically face a huge number of applicants, and they're typically not as pleasant to deal with as the Brazilian Federal Police in Rio de Janeiro. Okay, so it's going to depend on where you're going to be based. It could easily take a couple of months, And, like when you get a visa abroad, you need to get this interview, this appointment done at the Brazilian Federal Police in no more than 90 days. All right, Ahmed. Hello, Dr. Oliveira. How are you? Good to see you, Ahmed. What is the size of the electric car market in Brazil? And do you think it is growing in the near future? Ahmed, it is actually, being an interesting a market in Brazil, particularly for the Chinese manufacturers, right? Tesla cars, they are not popular in Brazil because of the price tag. Like the Brazil average person basically doesn't have the means to buy a Tesla car. So yes, you do have Tesla cars in Brazil, but they're actually very rare. On the other side, you have many Chinese brands selling a lot of electric cars in Brazil, right? Brazilians, they are typically interested in new technologies, in changing their behavior over time, and I think that electrical cars in Brazil are growing kind of fast, right? And there is room for growth for sure. But again, it depends on the price tag, right? So the Chinese cars, they are becoming a success in Brazil because they offer, really nice packages with really small price tags, right? Some people even talk about dumping, which is the process of, selling around cost, to make it difficult for competitors to enter the market just because the deals that you could get in terms of an electric car from a Chinese manufacturer in Brazil, they're just very good, right? Sometimes people say too good to be true, right? And yes, interesting question, Ahmed. Christopher, boa tarde, doutor. Boa tarde, Christopher. Good to have over here. Do you anticipate Brazil tightening CPLP visa approvals now because São Tomé and Príncipe's new Golden Visa program? Please advise if you already addressed this in another live. Christopher, yes, I spoke. I think it was a couple of lives ago, probably no more than 3 lives ago, about São Tomé and Príncipe, right? And the problem, with the track for the CPLP is that Portugal is tightening the screws against immigration from Brazil to Portugal. And I think, this kind of better access of Brazilians to Portugal, it was the whole point of the CPLP in the past, right? So, from this perspective, I think it could be natural for, the Brazilian government to make it more difficult for CPLP applicants, right, to navigate Brazil immigration. Still, or despite that, we even nowadays, we see some level of friction. And I can give you an example of, how the Brazilian immigration is making things more difficult than they should be from a legal perspective, right? So in our constitution, we actually have a provision saying that, citizens from, Portuguese-speaking countries, they should be able to naturalize or acquire citizenship after 1 year. 1 year of legal residency in Brazil, okay? And now, if you try to apply, guess what? The Brazilian immigration does not have a framework for that. So nowadays, the framework that we see available is that you come to Brazil, you're going to apply for residency under the CPLP. And for those of you who don't know what CPLP is, CPLP is basically a track, an immigration track for those who come from Portuguese-speaking countries. So that's all it is, right? CPLP, it just means I'm coming from a Portuguese-speaking country, and therefore there is a special track for me, all right? So now that we have this out of the way, going back, like Constitution says 1 year of residency, yes, I can apply for citizenship, but in reality, like when you come to Brazil, you have a track that's going to offer you 2 years of temporary residency, and after those 2 years of temporary residency, then you would need to apply to convert your temporary residency into a permanent residency. And then after 1 year of permanent residency, that's when you would have a shot at applying for the Brazilian citizenship, right? So Constitution says 1 year, framework says 3 years, and when you try to apply, I wouldn't be surprised if the Brazilian immigration would, bring some additional friction to the loop, okay? And what we see happening is that some people, particularly, if they're interested in securing the citizenship SAP, they could potentially file a lawsuit against the Brazilian government based on the Constitution, right? Just like in other countries, like the Constitution is meant to be the highest regulation possible, and you cannot have regulation under the Constitution saying something different from what you have in the Constitution, right? So there are lawsuits out there seeking to allow citizens from a Portuguese-speaking country to apply, for citizenship in just a year of legal residency in Brazil. Now, the thing with São Tomé and Príncipe is that they are now offering like a for-purchase citizenship, right? It looks like you invest $90,000 US, and then you can basically just get a passport, right? And once you get a passport from, such countries, like you have like this easy access to Brazilian citizenship, if you will. All right, Christopher. But again, because this 1 year thing is codified in our Constitution and the Brazilian Constitution, even through amendments, it does not allow for the reduction of individual rights. So there is no hope for Brazil to change this provision, okay? What Brazil could do, and it has been doing to some extent, is to create a certain level of friction that is going to kind of dissuade people from, overloading our immigration system, right, Christopher? Very interesting question. I hope that was helpful. And now we are arriving at the end of our live stream. Make sure, now before we go, make sure to show up on Sunday, right? This Sunday is going to be the second Sunday of the month of November in which we have a live stream. So we try to keep our live streams on Wednesdays consistent, but on Sundays we're going to have, a couple of Sundays per month, to accommodate those of you who are unable to show up during weekdays. So don't forget, we're going to have a live stream. It's going to be on this Sunday. It's going to be on, what's going to be the day? So it's going to be on the 30th, November the 30th. And on Sundays, remember, we meet at 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time instead of 12:30. Okay, so hoping to see you over there. Thank you for all the participation. Thank you, Matt and Adrian, for buying me lunch today. And wishing you guys a blessed rest of your day.